We're going to do two games where we're going to look at black playing a Carlsbad in the Queen's Gambit Decline. And what I like about these games is they showcase one of the things you sometimes you don't see in high-level play, which is that black gets a strong initiative against white. And the reason you don't see it that often is usually white has done something to preempt it. So it's kind of like a hidden thing about the Carlsbad structure that people should know about. I can say myself that when I was a kid and played the Russians, I was consistently going for like some minority attack nonsense because I hadn't understood that pawns aren't people and they would be wasting me. So let's get into it here with Sinaga's game. We're going to flip the board because I believe he was black. And yeah, let's go. Standard business. And on the show we've talked before about how that it's nice to get the structure where you can play knight e2. This, of course, is a very common Carlsbad structure as well. But the trick about this one, about the knight on f3, is that it's oftentimes hard to use your extra center pawn with f3. And we're going to keep that in mind going forward here. Okay. So Raven here is saying he chose to avoid common theory. Bishop d6 is weird because you're inviting knight b5. But okay, here we go. You're gonna have to play you're gonna have to play c6 anyway, is the long and the short of it. Okay, here we go. So let's just be clear. We're going to see bishop e7 in the next game. This bishop d6 has been seen where you play c6 first, because I don't think you want to allow knight b5. But this way of playing is possible. And let's get into it before I say too much here. And bishop g3 is a little bit weird here, but it is difficult to understand exactly what to do as white. Let's talk about it, though, from black's point of view. Let's just look at this move. Probably you should have taken on g3. And the thing I want to stress here is this is a very dynamic position where you can get different variations of this kind of position, where black's pawns really are pointing towards the king side. Now sometimes, for example, if white can get in f3, white can attack in the center as well. But if white goes about his ways with the dogmatic b4, b5, it's going to be up to black to create play against the king side, and he's going to have to be creative when he does that. For example, totally different position but similar dynamic. In the King's Indian, black also has to be creative to find play on the king side. Okay, so taking on g3 would have created an important weakness for us to later gnaw on. There we go. We get it anyway, of course. And here, it really is a fascinating question of how do we play against the king side. And I am not entirely certain how to play this position here. But that one probably can't be too wrong. But I guess I want to leave this guy here as like our angry bishop, kind of actually like a King's Indian. It's not too easy. And also with bishop g4, the other thing that's super weird about bishop g4 is inviting knight e5, which I think white kind of wants to be doing anyway. So maybe knight g4. And knight g4, the idea is that, first of all, if we ever get a queen to h5, that's a nice thing. But we might also be kind of tenderly looking at those guys, and I really do want to prevent knight e5. Like I said, just an idea, and the main thing I want to stress about these positions is it really is up to black's creativity to find a way into the white position. But what does he think? That is clear. He thinks that pawns are people. They're not people. The playing b4, b5 is not going to save your king side. Knight e5 is what you want to play. And also, if you want to play the minority attack, just do it, son. You don't need to play rook a b1. Really a loss of time. Okay, a little bit weird. b4, a6, a4, queen f6, and now the guy sidelines his knight. And right, we're going to have our own questions about now how to get at the king. Bishop h5, it was a little weird because bishop e6 just feels more normal, but okay, but you have your own ideas. Snip, snip, bishop g6, and what you're doing here, this is the thing I want to be a little critical of, is if you just give white a total free hand on the queen side and don't come after him, he is just going to say, well, I'm going to trade off all my stuff, and I will have a weakness on a square like b6. So you are obliged to do something. And the other thing about bishop g6 I don't like is you are enabling the knight on h2 to come back. Knight h2 was a crime against chess. I don't really get that move. And you correctly say something like knight f4 needs to be correct. Yeah. Rook a1. Nice move. Okay, now the dynamic is going to change, where you still have weak pawns. Your pawn on c6, for example, is weak. But, you know, the c pawn will be dynamic. And one of the things I love about how this works out is you're still going to be looking at the king, and all of a sudden some really dynamic stuff is going to start to happen using the c pawn. Okay, I'm not thrilled with rook a5. Queen c6, knight c3, knight f6. Let me just say, the dude needs to, well, he's going to do it anyway, finally. Finally brings the knight back into f3. Okay. Here's his moment where he needs to be careful. He needs, well, let's just say he needs to develop a plan. Queen a2, I'm not thrilled about because I don't know really what it does. At this particular point, like, let's just say, first, a couple things. It's an example, and we're going to see this in the game, of how this pawn structure can oftentimes be a grief, because it means that the king isn't going to be totally happy about where it is in life. And so definitely something for him to be thinking about. But white has every chance of still being better here with, or at least, you know, good play against this pawn, of course. And I'm not exactly sure, but something like queen f5 comes to mind. What I don't like about queen a2 is that it's losing our touch on h7. Okay, queen a2, and now black takes over nicely here. Two meaningless moves by white, another third one, and then boom, now what are we doing? We're attacking the blockader of the pawn. Mistake, check to the miserable king, and now, my friends, just lay back and let it wash over you. Check, 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 mate. Very nice, Raven. So, beautiful finish, and really what white will often deserve. Now you could say, Jesse, there was mistakes on both sides. What am I supposed to get out of that? The thing to get out of it is there was always mistakes on both sides, even at a very high level game. And what's nice is you saw there the finish had everything to do with the weakness that white had on the king side. All right, now we're going to do another game with the Carlsbad structure. Say Chess, glad you could make it. Thank you. It must be anciently late in Denmark. Okay, so here we go. This is a more traditional position. And here, white had the option of playing knight e2, which, at least for my personal preferences, I would have preferred, because you then can use the f-pawn more easily, right? You have an extra center pawn, and oftentimes in the Carlsbad, it's harder to use. It's just hard to use because it doesn't come into play. All right, knight f3, rook e8, castles. And now, I don't think I'm thrilled with knight f8. I know it feels logical and everything, but I'm pretty sure the guy needs to play knight e4. And very standard way of gumming it up in the center there. And, you know, the point is when you take, I'm holding this point down, and, you know, if you take on e4, which maybe you should, I will use that pawn on e4 as the gateway to my movement towards the king side, so I can get some play over in that direction. Okay, h3, I don't like that move. And here, I think knight e5 makes a lot of sense, where we're getting what's usually known as the Pillsbury Attack. And the Pillsbury Attack is more like a method, kind of like the way the minority attack with b4 is a method, knight e5, f4 is a method. And one of the reasons I really want to stress it is that the f4 move is a way to get your f-pawn involved. And sometimes it involves the rook, just as f3 does. So knight e5, especially here where this knight f8 has happened in a kind of weird way, it seems reasonable to me. I have to admit, maybe knight e4 maybe for black. I'm not sure you can get away with that. But anyways, that would be a question mark for me. So, h3, bishop e6. Not really thrilled about it. And I wanted knight e4. Rook b1. So notice that in both games, white defaulted to the minority attack. And again, it's not necessarily the worst thing to play the minority attack. But the thing to realize is if you're going to play black, Queen's Gambit Decline, you will get a lot of people playing the minority attack against you because they think that pawns are people. And then it's going to be up to you to create play on the king side. Knight h5, b4. Okay, so let's just say knight h5, I feel like maybe earlier black just didn't even know about the knight e4 trick. In any case, the knight is now funky on h5, but what I admire about what happens next is, I don't know if I should admire it, but he leaves the knight on h5 forever, and I've been a victim of this myself, and it often backfires. But the idea of leaving it on there forever is you're just kind of hoping that someday the knight is going to help in the attack on the white king, and that actually happens in this game. All right, b5, knight e2. The other good thing, actually, we should say about knight h5 is that the usual response to b5 is for white to play e4, but the good news here is that knight f4 is available. Now, do I think white is better? Yes. Things like knight e5 at any point here need to happen. Okay. Now, what's fun about this thing that happens next is that white is going to go on this adventure to grab a pawn and not realize that black understands that pawns aren't people and that he should be playing on the king side. And so right away he's got a threat of bishop h3, right? So he plays knight e5. Notice he's doing it not so much because that's a great square for the piece, but he's doing it now because he's forced to do it. Knight d7, snip, snip. Queen a7, rook e7. And now it's a funny thing where you've got this pawn that is an extra pawn, but now since your queen is away, the force count on the king side looks bad. And the bishop on d7 is doing a simple job of just controlling the only weakness. So watch how fast this kind of falls apart. Queen a3, knight c1, a little funky looking for sure. Queen h4, bringing the vampire to the wedding. King h2, you ready? Bam! And I think D-Lin was completely surprised by this. But the point is this is exactly what the Queen's Gambit Decline players are looking for in the Carlsbad. Am I even 100% that this works? No, I'm not even 100%, but I am 100% that this is what he should be looking for. Okay. And very tough to play this position. Boom. And I'm just assuming now this is lost. There might have been an easier way for black to play this, but just on a general level, the pinned knight means that black's going to win this thing. Technical, right? Technical.